The comments, opinions, and views shared during this program are of those individual Freemasons and do not reflect the official position of a Grand Lodge, concordant body, appendant body, Masonic Authority, or craftsmanonline.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Craftsman Online Podcast, the only Masonic podcast endorsed by the Grand Lodge of New York. I'm your host, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. It is good to have you back on this Monday morning. We are still looking to close out this year strong on Patreon. A reminder, we're trying to get 20 new subscribers before the end of the year. Craftsman Online is on Patreon. Here's what you get. Ad-free episodes and access to the full back catalog of all of our subscriber extra episodes. That's where we get some extra time with some of our favorite guests, like this week's guest, Worshipful Brother Bull Garlington, will be expanding on his discussion of maybe Maslow's pyramid could work, ... You support the show, $5 a month. We thank you so much in advance for that. And our thank you to you, ad-free episodes and more content. It's a win-win. So as we mentioned, this week we have a returning champion as we get ready to talk about Maslow's hierarchy and the Masonic journey. He's one of my favorite brothers to talk about. I'm so proud of him as he is an Oxford man now and making time to join us on the Craftsman Online podcast. Worshipful Brother Bull Garlington, welcome back.
Thank you, Brother Nortz. It's nice to be here.
So the last time we had you on the podcast, we talked about our friend Joseph Campbell. We got into the hero's journey. You teased a little bit about Maslow and the pyramid and his theory, the hierarchy of needs. We're going to get into that. And you're like, I got to share this paper with you. Then I read it and I was like, oh, this guy, this is why he's going to Oxford. Come on. So I want to dive into this, but I want to help our listener out who may be unfamiliar with the pyramid, with the theory. Give us a quick overview, but you got to do it in the Bull Garlington perspective.
I mean, that's the only one I have. So when I began to look at this, because I learned about it because another Mason mentioned it to me, and he was, mansplaining something, and he mentioned Maslow's pyramid. I'm like, I never heard of that. And he sent me a link and everything, blah, blah. I read about it. I'm like, that sounds familiar. And so I looked into it. First of all, it's not really a pyramid. And Maslow was an early 20th century social scientist, and he developed a theory called Maslow's theory of needs, or Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what it is when he says needs, he's talking about the most basic needs that humans have in order to develop. It's the basic path of human development expressed through what we need in each stage. And he did a lot of work on this, and he boiled it down to three basic stages. And those are broken apart a little more, and that's how people get the pyramid part. But it basically is stage one is making sure you have a roof over your head and you've got food. The second section is about socialization and connecting with people and belonging, which is important. And then the final section is self-actualization. And I thought, that sounds just like the 3 degrees.
For our YouTube live streamer, you've got the triangle there as part of Bull's research paper. But for the listener, you'll see where there's a quick parallel why he mentioned it during the Joseph Campbell hero's journey, because there's that one part in the arc of the hero's journey where there's that self-actualization moment, that awakening aha moment in life. And Maslow kind of lists this at the top of his hierarchy. Why is that? And then everything else comes from that, or is it from the ground to the top?
It's the final part of human development.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's basically our goal
is to have that aha moment in life, to answer the question of why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? What's my purpose?
Right.
And now for our listener that may have gone through the secrets that you and I share, now I can start to see that moment lining up with you and why a brother would say, oh, this is just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you're like, what are you talking about? So how do you explain that in your way, connecting to our Masonic experience?
Really, part of the needs that Maslow talks about are usually already taken care of when someone decides to join our fraternity, because most guys join between 25 and 35, and they usually already have a career, they've got a job, they've got a family. They kind of have their basic needs met. They're not struggling in the sense that they have a roof over their head. They're safe. And so they've had the first part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs satisfied. Although there is a lot of criticism about the simplification or how simple Maslow's needs are stated. I feel that there's a purpose in that because it allows people to interpret them in broader circumstances. And I think that's very good. People talk about how the first section with a roof over your head, that there's much more to it than just having food and shelter. To which I reply, of course, every generation develops new needs. And Maslow didn't talk about psychological safety, and he didn't talk about, social safety, because those things really weren't part of his regular day, so to speak. But the next section, the next phase of the hierarchy of needs is, to me, one of the most important, and that is that once those needs are met, um, a human being needs to belong to a group that accepts them. And to me, that's automatically the first and second degree right there. And then so they have to spend a long time being part of a group whose tenets and principles and precepts they respect and admire, and it reflects who they are. At the same time, they need to be part of that need is they need to be simultaneously accepted and respected by the people in that group. So you have to recognize them, and then you have to be recognized by them, and then you have to maintain your membership in that group by exemplifying the ideals that that group represents. And so that's a huge part of the second phase, and it's a big and long part of our life. We tend to belong to more than one group, and we come out of a group and go into another group. Finally, after that, is the final part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that is self actualization. And to me, that's absolutely what the third degree is all about. And that is about answering the age old and enduring and constant question, the foundation of philosophy, and that is, why am I here? What is my purpose? And when you do fulfill all the hierarchy of needs prior to that, you are on the path to answer that question. Typically, from what I've read in Maslow and in some of the other social scientists and psychologists, is that self actualization tends to happen later in life. Not many people get it early. There's a lot that has to happen in your life to sort of open up that channel.
Yeah, you got to have experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And that whole thing about in Maslow's hierarchy of needs about belonging to a group and exemplifying the principles of those groups, that's not an immediate thing. And so that takes a long time. But once you have achieved that second phase, um, it's still a long road to actual self-actualization. Even though people paint it as this little tip of the pyramid, first of all, Maslow hated the idea of the pyramid. He never called it a pyramid ever. To him, it was more like smoke. Even though it's represented as very small, it's an enormous and long period of effort. And to me, I think it represents the richest part of of a person's life. And since we're talking about what we're talking about, I'm just going to say the richest part of a man's life, I think, happens in that section where he is trying to determine why he is here. I think that is one of the most important and enduring questions we have.
So knowing you, you didn't get this explanation while you were going through the degrees.
Mm.
I'd like for you to tell us, like, how did this just come out? Because no one's going to say at the bar one night over a drink, you should investigate Maslow. He talked all about the needs, and that's what's going on. That's not happening. So if you could just the Reader's Digest, like what led into this conversation. And then most importantly, I'm interested in knowing, once you hear this and it comes into your brain, you're like, well, let me stew on this for a while. When you were chewing on it, what was your thought process of trying to go, yeah, he's onto something here. Now I'm seeing it. Now I'm living it.
When I wrote this paper a while back, I was still operating. I was still in the early part of my self-actualization, and so in a lot of ways, my talks and my presentations were really about me. And what I really enjoyed doing was finding um, templates and overlays from culture that fit directly over Freemasonry in order to constantly point out its universality. Like with the hero's journey. Boy, howdy, does it dovetail nicely on that. And then on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, gee whiz, it kind of dovetails nicely. That we change every 7 years. A kid at 7, a kid at 14, a kid at 21. Um, each we tend to have, in general, 7-year phases. And I mean, it's not to the day or anything, but Maslow and Engel and some of these other guys were philosophers. They weren't lab scientists, and they weren't really social scientists or psychologists. They were more like philosophers. That doesn't mean that what they talked about was incorrect, but it does mean that in most cases, I don't think they did a lot of hard science field testing of their ideas. I think that they thought to themselves that they gave it critical thinking and that they mulled over it with the tools of logic and rhetoric and et cetera, and thought to themselves, this holds water.
Worshipful Brother Bull Garlington is our guest on the Craftsman Online podcast. He's graciously offered up his paper on Maslow's hierarchy and the Masonic journey. If you're interested in getting that, just open the show notes for this episode. Bang, you're going to find the link right there that connects back to it. For those that have read the paper or those that are just interested, one of the concepts that you introduce is peak experiences. And as you were talking about your Oxford, going back to school, working on that degree at 60, does that qualify as a peak experience?
I think a peak, first of all, I hope no one believes that I came up with the idea of a peak experience. I definitely did not. And it wasn't Maslow, it was somebody else. A British guy came up with that. And to clarify what a peak experience is it's a moment in your life where it transcends all your entire life up to that moment. A lot of people equate it with the birth of a child, but I think it's greater than that. To me, it's more similar to a religious experience, and it doesn't have to be religion at all. Mountain climbers talk about it a lot. I mean, they're on a peak, so whatever. It's when something happens, and for a brief moment, you're sort of outside time, and you're sort of having an experience that is untranslatable. And when you're finished with it, you want to share it with everybody, and you are definitely a different person after that. Absolutely.
That would easily apply to the initiation process, the being raised process, the first and the third degrees in Freemasonry.
Well, I think there's a very specific moment it applies to, but I'm not sure if I can talk about it here. I mean,
can you
pause for a minute?
Or
let me tell you what it is, and you can edit that part out if it's not appropriate. All right. So if I have to explain this, I'm going to be talking about that moment in the first degree where they remove the blindfold. All right. And so I don't know who listens to your podcast, and I don't know.
That is out there. That is in all the ritual that's online.
Yeah,
so
right.
You could buy that book. Yeah.
You can get it in the library. So to me, that is one of the most transcendent moments of Freemasonry. And here I go again, when it's properly managed and curated.
Yes.
And this is the most important part. A candidate should take a long time to get there. A long time. In my lodge, it's 18 months. And in that time, that guy has many opportunities to walk away, and sometimes that happens. But if they don't, they become such an integral part of everyone's life. They've been in our homes, and we've given them a ride. We've bought them drinks. We've hung out till 2 a.m. talking about all kinds of stuff, life and everything. And we've recommended books. They've recommended books. I know what they like in music. They know what I like. We are friends now. We're in each other's lives. Not just me, but every guy in the lodge. All right. We love this person now, and they love us. We've all fallen in love together. When that moment happens and they say, "Let there be light," when that person looks up, they know every single person that they're looking at in that room. And every one of those people represents this society and every one of them is beaming at them and saying, welcome. And that is transcendent experience. In our lodge, it is typically the time where someone is brought to tears and not just a guy kneeling. It is a heartfelt moment. To me, that is definitely a peak moment. Right?
As you're describing that, for me, I was still wondering what the hell was going on in the first degree, because it was completely different than what I thought, and I had watched all the YouTube videos, so I knew everything.
Yeah.
But the one that really got to me was physically being raised in the third degree, and seeing those people that I respected in the room, those men looking at me and me looking at them, and just realizing we just made a lifelong bond. Like this just happened. And I would never have met this person. I would probably never have interacted with them if it wasn't for this shared experience, like right here, right now. And I'll never forget them for the rest of my life. There's no way to wipe that. And it shapes you. I do want to talk about the things that you have written, because your paper is full of the good bowl, as I like to say. When you talk about living our virtues, and that's kind of the theme here, you write, Freemasonry is not relegated to the period when one is satisfying the minimum requirements to progress to the next degree, but observed and engaged for the rest of one's life. What was the experience that shaped that quote and brought it out?
I was an asshole one day. I was
just one day, huh?
There was a particular day while I was being an asshole. We were redoing our kitchen, and I was at the tile place. They had these special tiles that we'd picked out that were ready, and I was going to go load them up or bring them to the guys. They're at my house on the clock. Chicago is impossible to park. And so there's the loading dock, and I'm waiting for the people in the loading dock to leave. And finally they leave, and I get ready to get in the dock, and somebody just swoops in and parks there. And I've been there for 45 minutes. And I'm like, oh no. And so I found some actual parking, and I parked there, and I stalked into that store, and I said, who's got the red Hyundai? And some guy goes, that's me. I'm like, what kind of an asshole are you? I was there. I've been waiting for 45 minutes. And then he goes, hey, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you'd been waiting. I thought you were just parked on the street. I apologize. Do you want me to go move my car? And then I was like, crap. And as I'm stalking away, I'm like, oh man, what a turd, you know? And it suddenly just showed up in my head, and it was like, not very prudent of you. Not really temperate either, you know? And then it was like, is that just? And I was like, God. And so I went back in, and I found them, and I go, hey, I'm so sorry about that. I'd have no right to talk to you that way, and that was not who I normally am, and I want to apologize for being a jerk. And the guy goes, hey, man, I understand. Don't worry about it. He goes, we're almost done. And then when he came out, he held the space for me, you know? And so that was the first time I realized that the virtues don't matter until you use them, and you don't own them until you use them. And that is an important thing to learn, and it's something we should talk about all the time. You should have when guys are in the first degree, their mentors, besides teaching the catechism, they should be sitting around going, tell me about how you used temperance this week. Tell me about something where you had to engage with fortitude. They should be talking about that. The guy I told you about, Scott Hayden.
I thought you meant the asshole with the red Hyundai.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, he is the one that gave me the nickname. He introduces me like that. He goes, "This is Bull, the shit asylum." So,
oh man,
yeah, pretty good.
Next episode, here we go.
So,
yep.
So he is infinitely more educated than I am, and brilliant. He reads Greek and Latin, and I hate his guts. He talks about, and he's writing about this right now in its application to our fraternity, that before the rise of organized religion, and in particular the big one, all the learned people in that whole area around Alexandria and Greece and all the Mediterranean, they guided their lives by the daily employment of philosophy. For them, it wasn't just a thing they studied. It wasn't just an intangible discipline. or study. It was an actual discipline. They employed it regularly. And so the cardinal virtues, they didn't come from Constantine. They existed long before that. And people had their own little philosophical toolboxes, and they used them to make decisions and to determine what they should do next and how they should behave and how they should react to things and how to deal with something that happened to them. We've been given a toolbox. Right there. You can read it.
I want to talk about that point because it's explained, the hierarchy of needs, the self-actualization, and the awakening moment that you have, and all the wonderful thing. I'm curious if the reader, when you get it, when you officially get that, is it the same feeling when you accept Maslow's needs and go, okay, I'm going to understand this, I'm going to start living my life, I'm going to recognize this, I'm going to be looking for the next step? Is it the same as like when you get the working tools explained to you and then you actually go, hey, this is how I could practically apply these lessons or this symbology into my everyday life?
I think so. Yeah, and I think that that's another gift that we get like that. It's a if you think about it, it's one of the first places where people were given time management tools and de-escalation tools. That's what those things are. They are not only are they symbols and everything, but of philosophical ideas, they're management tools. When you think about it, they're very pragmatic and very practical. And yeah, I think the moment is very similar to that.
One other thing I wanted to get to is you do an excellent job of connecting the degree work, especially in this episode, as you've outlined, with everyday life. And one of the other quotables from you is, quote, "The work of exemplifying prudence does not occur when one is studying the virtue, but when one is confronted in daily life by a choice which requires a prudent judgment. The work of performing one's duty to one's neighbor is not fulfilled by recitation reciting of ritual, but by actually assisting one's neighbor. The monastery of Freemasonry is ordinary life. It is wherever it exists. The more often one does this work, the more often one may experience it." You were kind of speaking to Maslow's everyday epiphanies, and you did kind of talk about one of those instances with the Hyundai and the guy and prudence and virtue. But I really like the idea of coming to the aid of one's neighbor, especially when we live in a time when it just seems to be a lot of relationships, especially with people that we call neighbors, are transactional. Many of us don't live in those communities that we grew up in anymore. We've moved to other parts of the country. We have neighbors that are constantly on the coming and the going. We don't even know their last names, or as you have said, we don't know the music they like. We don't know anything about this person. We haven't had those up until 2 a.m. Meetings or conversations. So I want to kind of get to that point about what makes Freemasonry different in that mindset, and that it's the guy it's the guy from Alabama who was raised the right way, who was taught to open the door for someone, not because you're waiting for them to say thank you for opening the door, but because you know it's the right thing to do.
Also, you're first. You're the first guy there, so hold the door open for the people behind you. It's just a simple courtesy.
These little everyday moments, because that recently happened to me where we were in Greece, and we're not to sound bougie, we were on a cruise. My wife and I were in Greece for a week.
Listen to big rich guy here.
Yeah.
You buy a Hyundai?
I was just renting the yacht for the week. But no, I was sitting in the hot tub, and I realized, there was this couple that was sitting across me. They were speaking a different language. I noticed out of the corner of my eye that they connected with another group that was coming to the hot tub. I was sitting next to them. I got up and offered my seat to the lady that, the new person that came in. And then all of a sudden the guy looks over to me and says in perfect English, almost like, "You must be an American." And I'm like, yeah, well, it turns out they're South African. And I'm like, "What? Why?" And he's like, "Because nobody else does that offers these seats." And I'm like, "Well, I was just raised right. I don't think it has anything to do with being an American. They're your friends. I'm not going to sit in the middle of people in a conversation. I can gladly offer up my seat." And to me, it was one of those everyday epiphanies where it's like, I'm living by a code as a man and a Mason that I choose to live by. I'm not expecting other people to live by this. It doesn't make me better than them. It's just that it's the ultimate golden rule thing. I'm just doing to other people how I would want to be treated because I believe that that's what's right. And I felt like your quote speaks to that it's these everyday little life moments that show you that you're on the right path. We get tested in a way.
Yeah, we do. We're tested from the moment we wake up to the moment we go back to sleep, and maybe even in our dreams, I suppose. We're always in the middle of being tested because that's what life is. You're always confronted with the living of it, and having a handy toolbox around is a good thing to do. And there's a reason why prudence is first. And I think I'm stealing from my friend Scott right now. You need to have him on. Prudence is first because prudence is the most important of the virtues. And prudence is about discernment. It's about making good decisions. It's about understanding what the effect of your actions are going to be, not only on yourself and your life, but on other people involved, even the people that, I don't know, if you're in a lawsuit, even the people that are on the other side. Prudence is about understanding what you're doing and making a good decision. Mostly you can think of it as discernment. Without prudence, how can you be temperate? Because you don't know who to chastise and you don't know why. Is it yourself? Is it somebody else? Without prudence, you don't know that this is a moment to engage fortitude. And without prudence, you don't realize that you're in a moment that requires justice. Prudence is the most important of the virtues, and it is the foundation of a good social good social philosophy. In terms of the things happening every day, this is the hardest part of making a good man better. The hardest part is for you to work on yourself and recognize that, if you look in our charge and it comes to duties and all that stuff, we're last, right? We're last. And our neighbors are right before us and God is right before that. And so I think people need to pay attention. There's nothing in a ritual that is accidental. It's all purposely written and it's all meticulously written, and people should pay attention to it that way. When you recognize that, then you are able to apply the virtues and the other tools we have in various times in your life to give yourself enough time in the moment to decide how to act and to decide how to act in such a way that fulfills those virtues so that you act prudently and you act temperately and you deliver justice, as it is required. And so that's what the toolboxes give you is that ability to have a moment. So there's a buffer between the stimulation that you receive, the comment on Facebook that enrages you, okay, and then the time when you begin to bang on the keys in response. There's a moment right there, and in that moment is when the virtues should automatically show up in your mind, and the first one should be, hey, is this prudent? And the answer is almost always no. So to me, that's what it's about is living it that way. And it's not just about our interactions with other people. It's about everything, I mean, you can even apply it to such simple things as watching television, because the things that you pay attention to become who you are. So maybe ask yourself, should I be watching Rick and Morty? The answer is yes, because I am Pickle Rick. Should I be spending so much time surfing Reddit down this rabbit hole? Would it be more prudent to spend a little bit to spend that time doing something that's more real?
You actually have a much brighter and nicer way of putting it. I sit here and go, okay, of course I love my wife. Of course I do. But ultimately, when I'm filling my pants or I'm not feeling well or I can barely get out of bed, I'm going to need her to want to take care of me. So should I go back and play my PS5 for a few hours, or would it kill me to just sit here and watch Real Housewives of fill in whatever area it is for an hour? You talk about quality time and making moments count, but those are like the little things. But seriously, to what you're saying, like, yeah, you learn as a Mason when we talk about, the 24-inch gauge.
No, wait. I want to go back to Real Housewives. Okay. Don't forget, because for me, it's 90 Day Fiancé. That's what my wife watches.
Oh, dude.
That's her disconnect.
Oh, Jesus.
Don't forget when you're sitting there in the living room and you've decided that this is what we're going to watch because I love her and I married her on purpose.
Right.
And she deserves this. Remember this. Ask questions about the cast because it matters to her. All right.
We had to get separate internet in our house so that when I'm doing these podcast episodes, she can watch, 90 Day Fiancé, 90 Day the Other Way, the 90 something. I didn't know they made all of those.
Hey, if you've enjoyed this time with our guest, Worshipful Brother Bull Garlington, you are going to love Thursday's Subscriber Extra episode. On Patreon, you can join us for just $5 a month, get ad-free episodes and the Subscriber Extra episodes. I'll even give you a test drive right now. Find the link to sign up for your 7-day trial in the notes for this episode. I'm Right Worshipful Brother Michael Arce. Until our time together next week, let peace and harmony prevail.